What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Clean Energy Edge. I'm Russ Bates, and with me, as always, my Canadian co-host Brian Scott. Good to see you, Brian.
Great to see you again, Russ.
Well, before we dive in, I want to mention our last episode. I think it was titled "Here Come the Blackouts." That was very successful, or most listened to yet. Just short of going viral, I'd say, but it clearly stuck, kind of struck a nerve. People are waking up to the fact of what's happening, not just in politics, but basically here in the U.S., it's a self-inflicted wound. So very, very happy everybody enjoyed that. And today we're going to dig a little bit deeper. So with the legislation passed in the U.S., fossil fuel backslide, really, that guts clean energy tax credits. It props up oil and gas subsidies, and really tells the world, hey, here in America, we're not really interested in the future. We're very retro, if you will. Meanwhile, you've got countries like China, India, much of Europe, they're sprinting towards clean tech dominance. And we're just kind of nostalgic here. So I guess we want to really talk about how long before the U.S. becomes like a second world country economically, technologically, geopolitically, because of these types of decisions. So let's really get into that. Brian, let's kind of just do a quick recap here on what this big ugly bill did to supercharge fossil fuels. So let's see, checking my notes here. They have fossil fuels now have $18 billion in new subsidies. Great. They needed some more help there. They've also got royalty relief for oil and gas companies on federal lands. We'll talk about federal lands here in a minute. The clean energy tax cuts, of course, those were gutted. Domestic content rules were tightened. That makes it even harder for clean energy, right? And something called AMT, alternative minimum tax. Those exemptions were extended for fossil fuel projects. And I didn't understand exactly what that meant, so we'll break that down. The AMT, the alternative minimum tax, was, and I'm reading here, was designed to ensure that even the biggest corporations pay something. But now fossil fuel developers, especially in pipelines, they've got carbon capture in there and refining, are exempt. So they can also stack those credits and those deductions and depreciation and really basically walk away with, pretty much zero tax liability. Meanwhile, of course, clean energy is going the other way. So, Brian, what do you think of all that craziness of what we're doing here in the U.S.?
I think on the fossil fuel side, incentives like that are generally used to create investment, right? And I just don't think, in all honesty, that there's enough demand for drilling just based on the price of oil for it to have much of an impact on actual investment, but it will have an impact on profitability and lack of revenue income for the U.S. government from oil and gas companies. It's just going to cost them money. I don't think it's going to move projects ahead in any different speed. I just don't think there's enough profit in there right now for oil and gas. But obviously what we almost care about more is the fact that the U.S. is holding itself back from joining that modern grid era of more efficient grids that have cheaper energy that, makes U.S. businesses more competitive.
Yeah, it's a step backwards. Nostalgia comes to mind, and I think of the whenever back in the day, horse and buggies, and then the automobile came around, and people were like, no, we're gonna boycott and put up laws and regulations that don't allow for the automobile, because we want to stay with the horse and buggy. I mean, it's not much different. We're basically using 19th century technology here. So, but the rest of the world is moving forward, right? China, they lead the world in wind and solar capacity. I mean, it's really ridiculous what they're doing. I know Trump said it's last week or something. He made a comment of, yeah, China sells us all these wind turbines, and they don't have a wind turbine in China. Where are those at? They have more wind energy in China than the rest of the world combined. Um, India, they surpassed 50% clean energy, so non-fossil fuel capacity here just recently. Europe, they're over 50% renewable in multiple countries there in the EU. It's really just craziness, it seems like. So, I mean, with clean energy, if it is the future of tech and of trade, what happens when the U.S. stops showing up? Because they basically passed a law saying, "Yeah, we're not going to the show anymore. We're going to stay at home." I mean, what does that do in your mind for what happens in Canada, but across the globe? What's that impact, do you think?
I mean, for people I know that are involved in the private equity space in clean energy, they're not looking at the States right now. It's like a big X on the map, as far as don't even bother. So you're holding that money back from investment, but you're also in the long term holding back that kind of economic sustainability for the country, right? Like you look at China, the larger percentage of that energy that is essentially bought and paid for ahead of time with solar or wind or even nuclear or whatever it may be, because it's so low cost operating compared to when you have fuel stock that you have to buy, whether it be natural gas or anything else, coal. Like they're talking about clean coal. I just think it really holds a country back to take that approach. And even from a geopolitical stance, as far as all these countries wanting to work together towards initiatives, it's just going to be more things that they're working together, but without the U.S. a lot, and it ties hand in hand with the tariff stuff, right? It's
Yeah.
how does that go anywhere good for Trump and them? I don't know how they can. I don't know how historically this is going to look. But I have to say, I think the zigzagging right to left of the political spectrum in the U.S., like we see everywhere now, it's going to happen. I just don't think. I think all of this big hard shift just won't last.
Yeah, I don't see how it's able to. It doesn't feel to me, in that no matter what lens I look through, that this is sustainable. And we've got the climate piece of this that we haven't really discussed, and we can touch on that too. But really, it's the economic focus that we've been talking about. So what's that do? It's the economic dominance is going with the jobs created. It's jobs lost. I guess that's what we need to say now, because they're going away. I saw a report it's for IBEW electricians in Maine who voted for Trump. They were working in clean energy. They had projects lined up, Brian, is what this report said, for the next couple of years. And now they've got a bunch of people out of work. And they were interviewing some of these folks that voted for Trump, and they said, "Well, we didn't really know they were gonna do that. They're out of a job, and probably going to be out for a while. Maybe have to get on the road, and some of them are apprentices that they interviewed." So that's a problem. We're seeing projects left and right just drop off, mostly utility scale projects, just because the runway's not there. So there's that piece. Let's talk about that for a minute, and I'm anxious to hear your thoughts on what you feel of the jobs and just that economic loss.
Right. Right. I think the job loss is really hard to identify the impact, right? Like it just feels like you have that many projects. A lot of these are good union projects. Just hard to believe, really. That impact is going to be all over. It's going to be in red states. It's going to be in blue states. It's going to be hard to really define the impact. The economic, like you just don't want job losses, right? In a market where most people are worried about where the economy is going, where the cost of living is going, all these sorts of things. They're just playing with fire in so many different ways, and I don't know how they don't see that they're going to get burnt. Um, Maybe there's something we don't know, Russ. I don't know. But at the end of the day, when a lot of these companies funded the campaigns of the people that are making these decisions, it's hard to see that maybe they don't like how do they care? You know what I mean? If they can just keep getting reelected and fooling the people, that's what'll happen. But I feel like it ebbs and flows. I feel like people just aren't that naive.
I agree. I, I really get the sense that folks like that report I saw in Maine about the electricians, that it was an emotional vote. They got tied up, caught up, carried away in the moment, and they voted that way. So
Yep.
the jobs, I mean, that's going to hit people. That hits them very hard. So that's not good. With regards to the economics and what's happening to those households where they lose the jobs. Speaking of jobs, you also have domestic manufacturing, which is a problem, right? There were so many of this new tech, whether it's batteries, whether it's solar panels, all this new technology that we should be wanting to build here in the States. No, now they're not worried about it. The domestic manufacturing, I guess, is more about t-shirts and apparel, things like that, as opposed to real I'll say important stuff. I
Sure.
interviewed Mush Khan a few months ago about this, and he says, "Hey, domestic manufacturing is great if it's the right stuff." He goes, "I don't care about a hoodie. I don't care about where my tennis shoes come from, really. It makes sense for those to be made somewhere else." Now, tech, chips, clean energy, and stuff like that. Yeah, we should be building that here in the U.S. I totally agree, but I mean, people aren't doing that. That's gone away, right?
Yeah, a job isn't all jobs aren't equal as far as their economic benefit to society and the economy, right? It's one of those things. If we're just going to aim for low cost jobs like that or low paying jobs like that, then we might want to take a different approach on the immigration side of things too, because those are, I hate to say it, but those are the people who tend to take those jobs, right? It's
Yeah. And there's right now, I'll say a couple weeks ago, last numbers I saw, there were 400,000 manufacturing jobs in the U.S. that they couldn't fill. People wouldn't take the jobs,
yeah,
right? What makes anyone think that there's more people that are going to want to do these jobs, when they onshore, is what they're saying. And if they do onshore some of these things, or a lot of them, I know you mentioned low cost jobs. I think it would still be, at least right now, they're saying, this administration says, great high paying jobs, for the American worker. All right, if my iPhone, I always throw this up, right? If my iPhone cost more to manufacture, it's going to cost more for me to purchase.
yeah,
Are people going to be getting a new phone every 2 years or 3 years? I don't know what it is now. Typically it's every couple years, but
yeah,
or are they going to make do because they don't want to pay, instead of the $1,000 they pay for the phone? I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know exactly what it is now, but let's say it's 1,000 right now. Whenever it's imported, are they going to pay the 3,000, which is what I'm understanding that it would get to, or maybe more? Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to think twice.
yeah. I mean, budgets are shrinking for everybody because everything's so expensive. Why would you? Yeah, I don't see why people would rush to buy something that, as much as we all love our cell phones, I don't think they dramatically change every year, right? And if you're struggling to make ends meet, you're not going to buy a purchase like that. That's a luxury purchase that can't really be diminished into the cost of a cell phone plan as much when it's that much money. How many people are going to be able to afford that? We might go back to a low cost cell phone era with flip phones and very simple little technology at that point.
Yeah, I can see that. And again, with the manufacturing, I mean, I think we've talked about this before. I guess coming up on 30 years ago, whenever I was a young apprentice electrician, I worked at it was a state of the art Toyota um, manufacturing facility in southern Indiana. And there was a lot of automation even then. The weld shop was all pretty much automated. There weren't people welding there, right? This was all robots, basically. And that was 30 years ago. So, how many jobs would this really create for the American worker? I mean, you're going to have people there. You're going to have maintenance, right? I get that, and those are good jobs. I think those are, you have to have some skill to work maintenance at these facilities. Um, you still have people on the line these days, even at those facilities. But I think that's kind of starting to go away a little bit more. I think we're going to see an acceleration of that. So I guess how many jobs does that actually create? And is that juice worth the squeeze for the country as a whole? I mean, for that person that's getting the job, absolutely. For the folks that have to pay for that, or maybe not have those goods because they cost too much, where does that
And
go?
it really seems like most jobs out there, somebody's got an answer for how it can be automated out now. Um, so it really feels to me like any government that's not thinking 5 and 10 years along, how are we going to employ people, whatever it may be. And when you're eliminating jobs just because you just are politically opposed to, let's say clean energy, um, I just don't think there's any justification for it. I think they're kidding themselves. I think they're playing to their base and they're playing to their donors. And if they lose 4 years progress on that, it's gonna hurt the country, and that's sad, really. I don't like I say, it's just so hard. Maybe I'm overly optimistic. It's so hard for me to believe it'll be long standing. I have friends very much from my days in oil and gas that aren't big fans of clean energy, don't believe in kind of its efficiencies or costs or whatever advantages. That through the IRA and everything, always said there'd be a pushback eventually, and to their credit, they're right to a certain degree, right? But will that be a 4 year pushback? Or are we just going to swing back and forth on this and not really make a ton of progress while the rest of the world does? I don't know. Like Canada right now, luckily is pushing forward on that, but you can see all the budget cuts coming. We're definitely going to see a pullback, I think. And in the next election, could very well go conservative. It's hard to say right now, but it could go that direction. And that will be the push because that is the political opinion of the right. Right. And I live in, oil country, Alberta, which is perfect spot for wind and solar and all these places. But the conservative government here isn't, they spread a lot of misinformation about clean energy and all that sort of stuff. And, there's a large amount of people that buy into it.
Is is that, Brian, like the lobbying, so to speak, that we see here in the U.S. from fossil fuel companies is it very similar there in Canada with what you're experiencing, and that propaganda, that misinformation, or even I'll go so far as to say disinformation, they're straight up lies?
Yeah, you definitely see a lot of that. There's definitely politicians in Alberta that represent areas that are just solely oil and gas. And on social media, all they talk about is oil and gas. Like they don't ever mention any other political issue, which is kind of astounding at times because you're a politician. You're supposed to represent the people. I get it. There's lots of oil and gas jobs in their district. But it just feels like there should be so much more to that job, where no matter what your views are, right? Um, it just feels so narrow-minded.
Yeah, I guess it's depends on who's putting money in your pockets, your campaign donations and those contributions. And I guess it gets to the next question with regards to the rest of the world and what they're doing with that move to clean energy. I talked a couple weeks ago with Shraddha, and
Right.
I asked her. I said, she's in Europe. She's from India, and she lives in the UK. I think she said she's in London. And I said, what's your view with what's happening in the U.S. and this pullback from clean energy, from the Paris Climate Accords, all of that? What's your view and the view of folks in Europe? is it slowing you guys down? Are you second guessing and thinking, well, hey, maybe the US is onto something. We shouldn't be doing this. And she said, absolutely not. She said, everybody else is moving forward, which, we gave some examples earlier. But if the US, and I don't think Canada's in this place, I hope you guys don't go there, but if the US does go in this direction and it's longer than just a couple years or 4 years or whatever, that's going to make lots of problems here in the States. But how far back does that put a country like the U.S. behind the rest of the world if we're drilling and it's coal and it's natural gas and it's oil and all that?
Yeah.
How can a country recover? I mean, it's not impossible, but it's not. They're not making it easy.
No, especially when you're talking about electricity grid, right? If investments are made, once things are built, they're there for 20, 30, 40 years in a lot of cases. Canada has some security on the electrical grid side of things. Move too far one way, I guess, just in that we have a lot of hydro and nuclear as a percentage of our electricity. But I think the big move you're seeing right and left is to pump more oil, right? That's a big push right now. More natural gas, get it to market, get it to the West Coast, sell it to Asia. I don't know that the demand's always going to be there. I mean, you're already seeing signs of weakening demand in Europe for natural gas. And I think when you look at China, all of their implementation of the electrical grid generation, as well as what's the word I'm looking for, the electrification of transportation, right? They're so fast with that. It just seems inevitable that their oil demand is going to drop fairly significantly in the next 5 years. Will the rest of Asia do the same? Like, you can see they're making the investments, but they're not maybe as far along or as economically able to, outside of maybe India.
Yeah. Whenever I look at China and what they're doing, because I hear people all the time say, they've got all these coal plants in China and they're still building them. And I think correct me if I'm wrong, they may have some coal there, but I want to say they import a lot of coal from Australia. But whatever, they're burning coal for electricity. And they always point at that. Well, China's burning coal. What do you think? How are they going to get ahead of us? Well, whenever I think about it from China's point of view, their economy continues to grow. They've got more manufacturing. The electrification that you're talking about with vehicles and stuff, they need a lot of electricity. And they're deploying a lot of clean energy, but they're still using some coal. I get it. I don't say I love it, but I get it, what they're doing. And I'm not saying the US or Canada shouldn't have some fossil fuel power generation. But I think it's very obvious that Canada is going in the clean energy route. I would say they're supplementing where they need to right now with coal plants. Maybe with natural gas. So I don't think that's the long-term play for them. I think clean energy is the long-term play. It seems pretty obvious to me. But that's not the play we have here in the US. Obviously, it's the play of Europe and other parts of Asia. I would say Africa. I think they're going to end up, there's going to be countries there that are going to be more advanced in their electrical grid and their generation than the U.S. I could see that happening. I wouldn't have said that a year ago, but I mean, things are changing.
Things are changing, and it's one of those, you have all these projects planned for transmission upgrades and all these sorts of things that are heavily based on greening the grid. And when all these projects come to a halt, I mean, if you're a utility, I'm sure that all these utilities are putting the brakes on a lot of this stuff, right? Why would they try to spend money to design grids that are going to be heavily green and heavily intermittent and require lots of batteries and all these sorts of things, when it doesn't feel like it's going to go that way soon? And the other part of that is that doesn't really make sense either, because I mean, utilities have been talking about the time it takes to do this. So hopefully some of them will stick with it through this time period. And as things ramp back up under another administration, maybe things will move quicker when they do. Maybe that's too idealistic, but
No, if I'm a grid operator, if I'm a utility, if I'm anyone that has money to invest in power gen, man, I'm probably going to be holding on to those dollars if I don't understand where things are going. I think, like we talked about last week, the blackouts are going to be, to me, something that we see more and more of. Again, it's not ideology, it's math of why this won't work here in the U.S. We talked about the increased consumption compared to the generation that's coming online, and we have lost a lot of that generation that was planned, that was in the queue, because mostly this bill that went through, and they're not going to be able to make it. But it's really something. I don't think they can burn their way out of this supply crunch. You don't have enough plants coming online and no equipment for years. That's going to be a big problem. Here, I'm going to say short term. Again, my idea of short term when we're talking about this is 2030, 2031, 32, something like that. So it's a big gamble that that the U.S. has made, and like someone said, we don't have the cards here in the U.S. Right? It's not going to work out. It's simple math.
I think the longer you wait, the worse that math gets, right? There's nothing getting cheaper these days. That's for sure. It's I mean, you're in construction, right? You see projects get delayed, and then, like, it doesn't matter what project, it could be building an arena or a solar array or whatever. Project gets delayed 5 years, and then people are surprised that it costs more. And that's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
Everything, all the pieces for it cost more, the labor costs more, everything costs more. So if you're going to build something, kicking the can down the road should come with the expectation that it'll cost more.
Well, not to mention the tariffs, and there's I don't think we talked about this, but the 50% tariff on copper. I mean, oh man, really?
There's no logic to that.
No, 50% tariff on copper. I mean, copper prices are going to shoot up. That really encourages, I think, of people stealing copper. And I've seen some pictures where they were very gruesome, where they would go to switch yards and they would be cutting the grounds that exposed copper. I mean, they would just burn them alive. I mean, you couldn't hardly tell that they were a person.
Yeah.
Right. They were just burned that badly. They just
get vaporized. I remember that in arc flash training years ago. It teaches you to respect electricity. There's no doubt about it. If you're not, if you don't respect it, it can definitely not only kill you, it can kill you before you know it. But you put that great value on that commodity. I just can't see I can't see even a political justification for that one. I really can't even wrap my brain around that one. It feels like I'm just going to punish specific countries and then use it to work a deal and then say I won, or I don't know. It's really odd to me.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I heard that, I was like, gosh, either this is a very diabolical plan to I would say separate even the haves and the have-nots, right? It's really going to cause a huge divide there, or it's just plain stupidity, just total ignorance, and but I'm not sure which it is. Yep. Neither option is good. I don't know if somebody sees another option, let me know. But how is that going to be a good thing? I can't see it.
Most of the tariff threats feel like a big threat, so that whatever the deal is, it looks better. In a lot of ways, right? It just feels like it's intimidation of the world's largest economy, and to that extent, I think it is somewhat effective. I mean, I think Canadians, even Canadian government, have started to say, like, we're likely going to end up worse off. The deal is probably going to be worse off than what we had before. Whether it's worse off for Canada and worse off for the States and nobody won, or whether it's just worse off for Canada and better off for the States, I'm not sure. We'll find out. But I've always kind of assumed there would be a deal. I just thought it would have happened a lot faster. I thought he was looking for an early win and an early, easy win. But when he started kind of throwing it at everybody, it just didn't make sense to me at a time when inflation was starting to recover, when there was concerns still about the economy. And it's one of those things, he wants a lower interest rate, right? It's pretty easy to see that if you don't have inflation concerns, the interest rate can get a lot lower, right? Like that's just the basic economics that he has to understand. But he doesn't seem to want to work within that. It's too part. It's I mean maybe too big a part of this other playbook that he's trying to just be different enough. Maybe he thinks this tariff strategy is going to take the U.S. to a whole other economic level. I'm not sure whether he believes it or whether it's a political play. I don't know.
Oh, it's gonna take it to another level, several levels down from where we're at now. I think you're onto something there. I mean, the energy is an important commodity that, and unfortunately, we're here in the U.S. making it very much a problem, just across the spectrum. It's not just going to affect red states or blue states or manufacturing or residential. It's all of the above and more, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be a problem. So I don't know. Closing thoughts on this, Brian, of what the U.S. is doing compared to the rest of the world.
I mean, it's maybe it's a paranoia of saying this. Maybe it's like a silly thing to say. But one thing that was talked about with climate change plans over the last decade or two was carbon borders, right? It was effectively like a carbon tax for coming across borders. And well, it was always kind of pushed aside by a lot of countries. As these economies, these larger and larger economies become more decarbonized, they could definitely enact some sort of carbon border strategy that would really punish the U.S. if they fell this far behind. I don't think that's what's going to happen, but it doesn't feel like there's any strategy here that's focusing on the what ifs. It's very much like we're going to do this and this is going to help right now, and wherever we are 10 years from now, who cares?
Yeah, yeah. I'd say what you just said makes a lot of sense to me in the strategy or that lack thereof. Let's just worry about today. Who cares about tomorrow? That'll be someone else's problem. Yeah, probably right. Man, that's terrible. That's a terrible way to end this, Brian, but I think you're right.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Like I say, I very much believe the U.S. will come back to reason. The voters will force it that way. The midterms, I think, are going to be shocking. I think all the poll numbers, including what was the one I saw today about immigration, people are upset about, and it felt like that was the one category Trump could do well with. I think he's in trouble.
He's underwater in pretty much everything in this whole Epstein situation. They're not letting that go. Typically something will be going for a day or so and then they'll just die off. He'll do something and, hey, look over here, and that's the story. But it's not working. He's not been able to really distract from any of that. So yeah, we'll see. But well, with what we're seeing across the globe, I'm like you. I'm optimistic. I mean, whenever we look at what the U.S. we really had, I wouldn't say we were the leader, but we were making a lot of progress in that clean energy revolution. But I think we've traded that for nostalgia.
Yeah.
Remember back in the day, and that's how it kind of feels. So while others are innovating, the U.S. is isolating. While these other folks and countries invest, the U.S. we're still protecting polluters, and to a level that I can't remember. So the real cost, it's going to be more expensive electricity. The jobs are going away. Tech leadership, they're not going to stay here. They'll find another place where it's embraced, and our national competitiveness is, I don't know, it's going to suffer. I think it's already suffering, but it will. And of course, the cost on our electricity bills, we're going to see it. I did start getting alerts for outages across the U.S. So I
Oh,
just wanted to see what that's going to do. So now I get text messages every time there's an outage, and it shows me where and the percentage and how many people are affected. So I'm going to pay attention to that. But another piece of, what we were
yeah,
talking about last week,
100%.
outages. So
It's a big part of the puzzle, and it's going to be interesting to see how it develops.
agreed. Well, let's wrap this one up. Everybody, if this episode made you think, hey, help us to get the word out. Like, subscribe, click that alert bell. Share it with somebody who may find it interesting and get some value. All right. For the Clean Energy Edge, we thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks.